Every January, millions of people promise themselves they're going to change. Wake up earlier, eat healthier, save more money, quit old habits. And for a few days, maybe even a couple of weeks, it feels real. Then something happens. Motivation fades. Old habits creep back. People blame themselves. I just wasn't disciplined enough. I'll try again next year. But here's the truth. Your failure wasn't personal. It wasn't weakness. It was predictable brain behavior. Think about your own experience. Maybe you promised to wake up at 5 a.m. for a week. Or you joined a gym on January 1st, full of excitement, only to find yourself skipping sessions by February. Or maybe you vowed to quit a habit, and by the second week, you were right back where you started. The brain is not judging you. It's just doing what it's wired to do. Once you understand how the brain actually works, New Year's resolutions stop feeling like a willpower problem and start looking like a design problem. So why does this happen? Why does the brain trick us into thinking change is easier than it really is? That's what we're about to explore. The illusion of a fresh start. The new year feels powerful because your brain loves symbolic resets. Psychologists call this the fresh start effect. Dates like January 1st, birthdays, even Mondays create a mental line between old me and new me. Your brain treats time like chapters in a book, and you imagine turning the page to a better version of yourself. The problem? Nothing actually resets. Your habits don't reset. Your brain's wiring doesn't reset. Your environment doesn't reset. Only the calendar changes. Here's what happens. You make a resolution, and your brain releases a little dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical that signals reward. It lights up when you anticipate something good. Even just imagining a new habit spikes dopamine, making your brain think, look, we've already improved. Your brain feels accomplished before you've actually done anything. And once it feels like the work is done, motivation drops. Announcing your goals feels good, and that feeling alone can quietly kill your momentum. Consider the research. People are more likely to buy gym memberships or start diets right after temporal landmarks like New Year's, birthdays, or even the start of a week. But those intentions rarely last. The brain tricks us into confusing intention with progress, and that's exactly why resolutions fail. The brain doesn't want growth. It wants efficiency. Here's something most self-help advice gets wrong. The brain does not care about growth. It does not care about potential. It does not care about who you could become. The brain cares about efficiency. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy, even though it's only a small fraction of your body weight. That's expensive. So over thousands of years, it evolved to save energy wherever possible. That's why habits exist. Habits aren't laziness. They're automation. Once something becomes familiar, the brain runs it on autopilot. No thinking, no effort, no debate. From the brain's perspective, change is dangerous. Change costs energy. Change introduces uncertainty. Even bad habits feel safer than unfamiliar ones. That's why people stay in routines they hate. That's why people go back to toxic relationships. That's why people keep repeating patterns they swore they'd break. Not because they enjoy them, but because the brain prefers known discomfort over unknown effort. When you make a New Year resolution, you're asking your brain to abandon efficiency in exchange for uncertainty. And the brain quietly resists. Why willpower collapses. Most people believe change is about willpower. If they just tried harder, if they were more disciplined, if they wanted it badly enough. But willpower is fragile. Psychology research on decision fatigue shows that self-control is a limited resource. It weakens throughout the day. It collapses under stress. And it disappears when emotions take over. Think about when resolutions actually fail. Not on calm, productive days. They fail when you're tired, you're overwhelmed, you've had a bad day, you're emotionally drained. That's because willpower lives in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic and planning. Stress shuts that area down. Meanwhile, habits live deeper in the brain. They don't wait for permission. They activate automatically. So when someone says, I just need more discipline, what they're really saying is, I'm trying to fight my nervous system using logic. And that fight almost always ends the same way. The dark part. Change threatens identity. Here's the part people rarely talk about. Most resolutions don't fail because change is hard. They fail because change threatens identity. Your brain isn't just protecting habits. It's protecting who you believe you are. If, deep down, you see yourself as someone who always struggles with money, someone who procrastinates, someone who never sticks to things, then real change creates psychological tension. That tension is called cognitive dissonance. The brain hates identity conflict. So instead of letting you change, it subtly sabotages progress. You miss one day and quit entirely. You make progress, then suddenly lose momentum. You improve, then self-destruct. This isn't fear of failure. It's fear of becoming unfamiliar to yourself. Dark psychology research shows that people will protect identity even when it hurts them, because losing a familiar self feels more dangerous than staying stuck. Why motivation is a trap? Motivation feels powerful, but motivation is emotional fuel, and emotions are unstable. Motivation spikes when something feels new. There's novelty. Other people approve. Then it fades. That's not a flaw. That's biology. Yet most New Year resolutions depend entirely on motivation, on how someone feels in January. By February, the emotional contract is gone. The brain asks a simple question. This costs energy. Where's the reward? If the reward is distant, abstract, or imagined, the behavior collapses. That's why motivation-based change rarely survives real life. Systems survive. Emotion doesn't. So what does the brain respond to? Not inspiration, not guilt, not pressure. The brain responds to friction and environment. It follows paths of least resistance. That's why you scroll without thinking, snack without deciding, repeat patterns automatically. Lasting change doesn't come from pushing harder. It comes from making good behaviors easier, making bad behaviors harder, removing emotion from the process. Small, boring changes work because they don't threaten identity and don't require motivation. The brain doesn't need excitement. It needs consistency without threat. Reframing the new year. The new year isn't a reset. It's a spotlight. It reveals what already exists, your habits, your identity, your systems. If your resolutions failed before, it wasn't because you were weak. It's because the brain doesn't change through intention. It changes through design. Understand the brain, and change stops feeling like a battle. If this made you question something you've believed for years, this channel is for you. Subscribe, not for motivation, but for understanding.